I describe shame as this experience that we all encounter as human beings at some point in our lives, and it's the message that we're not good enough the way that we are. We go on all of these outward journeys looking for worthiness in our marriages, we look for worthiness in our careers, and I think one of the reasons that we default to the outward journey is that even though it sort of it can make a mess of our marriages as we're trying to get other people to make us feel worthy, right? Something they can't do, they're not capable of doing. The inward journey is in a way a little messier, actually, because if we're going to get back to that true self, we also have to go through the shame that we started to pick up along the way. We have to confront all the messages that we're not good enough the way we are, that we're not worthy the way we are. And that can be a painful process to realize, wow, these are all the ways that I was sent that message. It became my truth, when all along it was the biggest lie about me.
We started the Resolute Road, but I also got into a relationship. And so through that relationship, there's a lot of stuff that started coming up in my life. And I was like actually being vulnerable with someone for the first time, and it was terrifying. And I was so afraid, and there was so much pain that had come up in my own life that I had kind of started to process. But then that relationship ended, and I didn't realize how heartbroken I was about all of that. I just didn't trust that anybody actually cared about me. Everyone was always out to use me for something. They had this idea of me that they had this false idea of who I was, so they loved the idea of me, which I think is pretty valid. But I think all these things are valid, but it was just so controlling that I just couldn't see if there was any good. Just knowing somebody, it's scary because I was just afraid of getting hurt. And yeah, and I think it's just anytime someone would compliment me or tell me they cared about me, it was instant, don't believe it. Just don't let yourself believe good things about yourself because you're just gonna get hurt. And yeah, it's actually really sad.
We perceive what we want based on our fears. We hide behind lies and shove down the tears. Me against the world, I stand tall. No more fear of weakness or meekness. I had no walls. I trusted. Look what good that did. One more brick, one more wall. One step forward. Is it real? One more step and I stop. 10 steps back. I won't be the one to fall. I see my flaws and failures. One more brick, one more wall. Why am I like this? I see it, I know it, I hate it all. Distorted view, I'm lost and surrounded by fear. The pain too deep to feel as the shame and guilt appear. Stop it, fix it, you're stupid, you're dumb. It's not as it should be. I'm starting to not feel it all. One more brick, one more wall. You'll only fail. You're not good enough. They will never love you. You can't trust them. You think they'll actually love you? They're just using you. You're not worth it. Your pain is dumb. It's all your fault.
The wandering and seemingly aimless struggles and unknowns were not random, but filled with so much purpose.
It's not even about marriage. It is about marriage. but it's so much more.
Our question changed from how do we have healthy relationships to what am I believing about love, culture, and myself that isn't true?
With that question in mind, we set out on the road again.
I'm going to pick up Teya, and then we're going off to California for phase 2 of production. It is early, and I'm sure she's exhausted. It's really hot in Phoenix right now. It's like 110 degrees. I walk around the corner, and this is what I find.
Become the worst watcher ever. Following Sadie into the car. Should we do this? Okay. Lecture.
If I would say the word intimacy or love, each person's experience would influence their definition, so we sought out more insight.
Talking about true intimacy, the thing you have to bear in mind is that the current culture is telling everybody a lie about what intimacy is. And that lie is, it's this idea that if you just get two bodies in proximity, you've achieved intimacy. That's not true. Intimacy is something that takes place emotionally. It's something that happens when you value the other person, when you know their fears, when you are sensitive to their fears, when you know their dreams and you're trying to help them to achieve their dreams. When you have that level of intimacy, like a connection, this is so cool. The sexual, the physical becomes the outgrowth of a deeper intimacy, something that's bigger and better than that. And what I love about that view is that now you're not having sex with a body only, of course you are, but you're having sex with a human being, with a person. The sexual intimacy that we're receiving from the world, the idea that two bodies in proximity, is such a shadow of the actual intent of intimacy. And it's really sad because you walk through the checkout stands, right, and you see all these ridiculous headlines on men's and women's magazines. 30 new sexual positions. Make him happy in 5 new ways. It's just like, what's happening here is that they don't understand that the physical satisfaction of sexuality can never actually be the thing. There has to be an emotional, social, a connection, an intimate connection that then gives rise to the physical. So this idea that, oh, there's a new position. Listen, there's only so many ways, there's only so many permutations, right? They're not like discovering new, you got 2 arms, you got 2 legs, you figure that out. But the larger thing that Cosmopolitan and Men's Health or whatever is missing is that that's not really what's happening in a sexual encounter. It's not less than that, but it's more than that.
But it's not just the physical intimacy that I think about. I think about like those little tender moments that you wouldn't have with anyone else. Sometimes they're silly and sometimes they're solemn. I just remember one time my husband and I were at lunch and he was talking about his marathon training. And I'm not particularly interested in marathons, but he was talking about his route and like he was going to put some water here and how far he was going to run at this particular time. And I just thought, wow, it's like, it's his voice, it's his pace. He's sharing with me, and it felt really intimate. And I just really got a sense of how many of those moments that maybe he had overlooked and dismissed. And I don't dismiss them anymore. We're mirrors for each other. Yeah. And if your husband looks into his wife mirror and sees like, oh, what a loser, right? Or if he looks into his wife mirror and sees like, you're the greatest, you know, you're the greatest guy. It can really change his self-perception. I mean, his self-worth. He takes a lot of it from the woman who knows him best in the world.
Mm-hmm.
In American culture, a lot of times masculinity is seen as not being vulnerable, not showing your emotions. And that's been kind of hard to grow up in because I've been learning more recently in my 20s that it's really important to be vulnerable with people, with your friends. And that's not something that's been deemed as okay, to be masculine and to be vulnerable.
To men who are what the world would call like macho or whatnot, like as a former athlete, as a jock and so forth, there are certain things I feel like you're almost taught to suppress, like, you know, be a man. I remember all of those things, like, and it's sad, but what made me really good at sports were the things that I would never teach my boys. And so I think that in marriage you have to practice those things hard, if you're like that, to give yourself emotionally, to be vulnerable, to talk about fears and doubts, and I think that might be the most masculine thing to do. I really do. For whatever reason, I believed some socially constructed lie that what it meant to be a man was to hide all those emotions and feelings and expressions, and, you know, don't do anything that's going to make you look feminine, and as opposed to just being who you are.
We just had a wedding in Seattle. So we drove from LA to Medford and then Medford to Seattle. We crashed at our friend Lou and Shane's hotel for like 5 hours and slept. And then got up and drove.
Culturally, we define love by intensity of longing or desire. So if I say to you, I love a cheeseburger, you know what I mean. I like cheeseburgers. If I tell you I love cheeseburgers, I'm not changing anything, but I'm underscoring it, and the intensity goes up. My desire for cheeseburgers. So if I love the beach, or love the beach, it means I really like it. Or if a boy sees a girl that he's never even met and says, oh, I love her, we're not talking about willingness to sacrifice, we're talking about wants, wishes, or desires. Now, the crazy part of this comes out when you ask what the English definition of the word lust is. Because the definition of the word lust is intensity of longing or desire. And so you begin to realize that one of the reasons we're so confused about love in our culture is that we took the definition of lust and infused it into the meaning of love, and we have a real definition problem going on. And so everyone's going around going, I care about love, but I can't understand why things are so messed up. And what they're really saying is, I'm really focused on my own wants, wishes, and desires, and I don't understand why I don't have sacrificial, loving, deep, committed relationships to enjoy.
As we started to look at what our culture was telling us about love and intimacy, we were introduced to an organization that was fighting to bring awareness to a subject that was distorting love.
It was never a topic that crossed our minds, but as we sat down and heard what they had to say, we were shocked with how much it was affecting our world.
I'm the executive director of Fight the New Drug. We are a nonprofit organization that educates on the harmful effects of pornography using science, facts, and personal counts. So we're not a religious organization or a legislative organization. We're just focusing on this issue as the research and people's personal stories have kind of presented the harmful effects. We're called Fight the New Drug because a lot of this research that has been coming out for years talks about how pornography impacts the brain like a drug. Pornography still stimulates these reward pathway hormones are released in the brain. It kind of floods the reward center with chemicals that tell your brain, this is a good thing, come back to this, do that again. And it starts to literally rewire the brain in a way that it can become addicting. Obviously not every person who uses or consumes pornography is going to become addicted, but it can become addictive in the sense that it's rewiring the brain to come back to this thing. It shows people as objects. It shows bodies as parts rather than as people with, you know, thoughts and emotions and feelings. And people consuming porn start to think of the other people in their relationships, romantic or not, as objects and body parts rather than people. And so kind of the desire to connect with another person is kind of gone. Individuals have spoken about their personal experiences, and these are men in their 20s who have reached a point where they have been unable to maintain an erection with a real life human partner in front of them, but they can still maintain an erection with pornography. Some of these men have expressed, you know, women they really loved and someone they really wanted to have an intimate experience with, and they couldn't because it wasn't porn. And that's super heartbreaking. A really interesting piece of the puzzle, because it really just shows, you know, it's not due to an aging body. It's not really due to anything other than what they've trained their brains to be stimulated by isn't a real human being. It's really changing the ways that we think as a society and changing, you know, kind of our views, and not only of people, but also of love and of intimacy.
I was with my football buddies, and that was the first time I was exposed to pornography when I was like 8 or 9. Went on from when I was 9 until about 29 years old. I was married at age 26, so I went through about 4 years of marriage, and no one knew. I happened to attend this presentation by 𝖍𝖐𝖎𝖓𝖌, and I'm sitting there, it was like a 2-hour presentation, and I'm just like, man, this is resonating with me so much, because no one's talked to me about it. So it's all this repressed emotions, you know. I'm like, oh my goodness, I did not know this stuff. I'm like, man, I need to make a change. And so since then, since telling the truth, the cool part is that no longer having that crutch is like I'm able to feel more emotions, the true raw emotions of what a relationship is, and that in turn makes it better and makes it deeper and makes it more challenging and more fun, more rewarding as well.
What would you say to yourself when you were younger?
I would say, man, it's okay. Like, you're okay, you're not a bad person just because you look at pornography. Because one of the common things that happens with pornography and repressed emotions are people start to feel like a bad person, and like it really starts to affect them. Like you said, it can affect your confidence, your ability to communicate and interact with people. Because you have that baggage, you go into this state of like almost like this numbness. You're not able to really articulate how you feel. If we don't talk about it as a society, it's just going to get worse and worse.
I just think that it's so sad.
Yeah.
And like, just think of the amount of people's lives that are destroyed by this belief system that isn't just porn, like it isn't just sex trafficking, like those are the extremes. But every day we're confronted and faced with all these ways of thinking that it's so opposite from the way we were designed for human connection and for family and for true love, you know? And so it's just so sad, I think, to see. So I'm really thankful for your friendship, because I feel like you've pushed me to learn to trust and to learn to have grace for myself and to learn to ask hard questions and go through hard things and continue to like do that. So I'm really grateful that we did this. Like, I'm really grateful that we did this together. Like, I would have never gotten here or learned this or continued for more than like a week of this journey if you hadn't been there next to me. Like, when you were really low, I feel like I was really high, and when I was really high, you were really low, and that balance, I think, was such a gift. We're tired and hungry.
Just tired of being in the car. I just want to be home in my bed.
Don't from the car! I'm running home!
it's hard to build trust in that. It's hard to build intimacy in relationships like that.
Trauma is going to push us into one of those extremes because we can't really trust people anymore.
I didn't realize how much the film would lead the healing journey in my own heart, or how my own healing journey would lead the film.